first contact terminated. They came bearing banners of peace. 7 ships, sleek and gilded, gliding silently into Earth's orbit like gods descending from Olympus. The United Galactic Concord (UGC) had been watching Earth for decades, deeming humanity finally ready for uplift. Their emissary fleet was elegant, refined, and confident. They had done this 100 times before, offered integration, access to superior technology, cultural alignment, and eventually compliance. They never expected to be denied. They certainly never expected to be destroyed. Ambassador Cloverin of the Saraxi Dominion stood tall at the edge of the Concord's flagship sanctity of law, gazing down upon the blue planet. They still burn hydrocarbons in some regions, he said, adjusting the luminescent data band across his temples. Primitive, but salvageable. A junior diplomat floated nearby, chirping nervously. Their radio silence is unnerving. No diplomatic beacon, no first contact acknowledgement. Just watching us. Cloverin smiled. It is awe, nothing more. But it was not awe. In the dark oceans below, deep beneath the Atlantic Trench, a network of dormant satellites lit up for the first time in decades. Around the Earth's poles, black obelisks hidden beneath the ice came online. The sky shimmered faintly. Something invisible had activated. It began with a pulse. High above, the first of the UGC's ships, Herald of Dawn, flickered, shimmered, then tore in half. No energy weapon, no visible projectile, just instantaneous structural collapse. Panic spread. Ships scrambled, breaking formation, activating shields. But it was already too late. From low Earth orbit, a coordinated lattice of kinetic killsats rained fire. Tungsten rods, moving at orbital velocities, shredded hulls like paper. 3 more ships disintegrated in seconds. Plasma ignited fuel cells. 1 vessel spiraled into the upper atmosphere, screaming flames trailing behind it like a comet of doom. Cloverin screamed as his own vessel buckled. Alarms howled in dozens of languages. Artificial gravity collapsed. Officers slammed into walls. The hull groaned. On the bridge, a hologram flared into life, grainy, archaic, but unmistakably human. A woman in a black uniform stood before them, her face emotionless, eyes like iron. This is Earth Strategic Command. You have violated Terran sovereign airspace. Stand by for Earthfall protocol. All incursions will be met with equal and opposite retribution. You should not have come. Then silence. Cloverin's ship was the only one that survived, its engines crippled, floating above the ravaged planet like a wounded animal. He watched the debris field widen, twisted metal, spinning bodies, vaporized dreams. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even breathe. He had made contact with a sleeping civilization and awakened something monstrous. Back on Earth, General Eliza Vorn removed her headset in the dark war room beneath Geneva. Around her, operators silently monitored the aftermath. Status? She asked. 0 surviving hostiles in low orbit, replied Colonel Hahn. 1 crippled vessel drifting. No attempts to retaliate. It's broadcasting a distress signal. Let it scream, Vorn said coldly. The galaxy needs to hear. Silence fell in the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. There was no joy in what had been done. No celebration. Just grim, heavy understanding. They had waited 80 years for this. Since the first deep space signal was intercepted, Earth had prepared. Not for contact, not for diplomacy, but for survival. Because humanity had seen what the galaxy did to the weak. The uplifting, the assimilation, the cultural purging. Earth had made a decision, never to be on its knees again. The Earthfall protocol was the final step, defensive extinction capability, an answer to unwanted gods. Cloverin's escape pod finally tore free, powered by auxiliary thrust, limping into deep space. He turned one last time to look at Earth, a world of oceans, forests, storm clouds, and death. And then he sent the message. To the United Galactic Concord, Earth has reached combat maturity. They were not surprised. They were waiting, and somewhere in the void between stars, as the fractured Concord received his words, a ripple of fear began to spread across the galaxy. The era of galactic dominance was over. The era of Earth had begun. The doctrine of silence. The Earth didn't respond because it didn't need to. For nearly a century, humanity had vanished from the galactic map. No signals, no transmissions, no warp trails. The stars that once buzzed with human curiosity had gone dark, like a lighthouse switched off in the middle of a storm. But silence, as the galaxy was now learning, wasn't ignorance. It was calculation. Deep within the subterranean vaults of Earth's lunar bastion, Admiral June Becky stood before a council of holograms, commanders of Earth's most secretive organizations. No politics, no ceremony, just the war that had been anticipated since before most of them were born. "The veil has lifted," Becky said, her voice calm but heavy. "The protocol has been executed. Now, we move to Phase 2. Across the glowing table, General Vore nodded, the steel in her eyes matching the war forged beneath Earth's crust. "They thought we were quiet because we were primitive. They'll soon realize we were quiet because we were ready." A younger officer, Lieutenant Kenzo, leaned forward, uncertainty in his eyes. "With respect, Admiral, how did it all start? Why the silence? Why not ask for help or ally with someone? We could have avoided war." The room fell still. Becky looked up and, for the first time, let the mask of command slip. It began with observation post-Vega, 46 years earlier. A Terran research crew, hidden in a stealth capsule near the Valor Nebula, had watched a first-contact mission unfold between the United Galactic Concord and a pre-industrial alien species. The species, peaceful, tribal, brilliant in their simplicity, welcomed the aliens like gods. Within 3 months, the aliens' culture was dissolved. Within 6, their children spoke only in Concordic. Within 9, their world was strip-mined for fusion fuel. The research crew sent back the footage, then self-destructed to avoid detection. It was then that Earth's leaders understood the truth. First contact was not salvation. It was surrender, and Earth would never kneel. Thus, the doctrine of silence was born. Every satellite, every deep space probe was turned inward or decommissioned. Civilian astronomy was repurposed as cover for a classified surveillance grid. The Deep Void Observation Network, DVON, monitored hundreds of alien civilizations. With AI-led analysis, Earth mapped the galactic political landscape from shadows. In orbit, the Orbital Interdiction Grid, OIG, was deployed, thousands of kinetic killsats cloaked in magnetic silence. The final layer of Earthfall protocol. Beneath the surface, humanity built TSOC, Terran Strategic Offensive Command. Not just a fleet, but a doctrine. Silent carriers, planet killers, quantum displacement missiles, and dreadnoughts operated entirely without AI vulnerability. They had been preparing for decades, waiting for one mistake. And now it had come. Back in the war room, Kenzo's voice cracked. "But how do we keep it all hidden?" Becky gave a half-smile, one without joy. "We stopped looking up. We stopped exploring openly. We let the world believe we were stagnating. Meanwhile, every global conflict, every war, every political event was engineered to build our unity in the shadows. Humanity has never truly been at peace. We used that. We knew they'd come one day, and we knew how to answer." In space, above the Martian orbit, SOC's first silent armada mobilized. 37 dreadnoughts, cloaked and humming with low-level power, began slipping into quantum drive. Their targets were not planets or people, but systems, communications nexuses, warp corridors, fuel relay stations. This was not conquest. It was surgical decapitation of galactic influence. Inside SOC's command ship Resolute Fury, Commander Sean Bakshi issued orders with the calm of someone who had trained for this moment since he was 16. No warnings, no negotiations. We hit them where they think they're safe. His XO, Lieutenant Vera, glanced at him. "They'll call us monsters. We were already monsters the moment they thought we needed saving." At the edge of the Sol system, an alien war scout drifted silently, sent to analyze Earth's defenses after the failed first contact. It didn't even have time to transmit. From the dark side of Pluto, a black spear of light burst forward, a gravity-piercing rail lance. The ship shattered without resistance, scattering into cosmic ash. Back in the lunar bastion, the strike registered as a green dot on Becky's screen. UGC Scout neutralized, the AI said. She turned to Vorn. Let the galaxy know. Ow! Vorn asked. Another warning? No, Becky said quietly. Let them find the bodies. In the heart of Concord space, Tolvaren's warning reached the High Council. Senators argued. Generals barked for retaliation. But under the noise, fear grew like mold. Their fleets were larger. Their tech was older but proven. Yet nothing had prepared them for this. Humanity had not risen in diplomacy. It had evolved in vengeance. And the galaxy had just woken the apex predator. The fall of Concord. The heart of the United Galactic Concord was a glittering sphere of artificial wonders. Alaris Prime, a city world that never slept, where delegates floated through anti-grav chambers and decisions shaped the fates of stars. But now it pulsed with panic. Holographic news feeds screamed across every wall. The footage was undeniable. Earth's defense grid vaporizing Concord's emissary fleet in orbit. No warning, no negotiation. Just pure, cold retribution. And in the center of it all, sitting at the emergency council table, was Tolvaren, survivor of the First Contact Initiative, his robes torn and his voice ragged. They weren't surprised, he rasped, eyes hollow. They were prepared. They were waiting. High Chancellor Vexery leaned forward, his voice trembling under a veil of authority. You claim humanity anticipated us? That this was a trap? Tolvaren didn't look at him. He looked past him. No, it wasn't a trap. A trap implies bait. This was an alarm. We triggered something ancient, buried, and violent. The room went silent. Then came the alert. A Concordian dreadnought battalion, stationed light years from Earth in what had always been considered a safe corridor of space, was gone. Not disabled, erased. No survivors. No distress calls. Just static and then nothing. High Lord Marshal Dryvox slammed his fist into the table. This is war. Deploy the fleets. Wipe their miserable system off the map. We tried, Tolvaren whispered. You don't understand. We were the gods. We had always been the gods. And now the mortals are awake. From the shadows of the Kuiper Expanse, the Terran Strategic Offensive Command, TSOC, had begun its assault. It wasn't an invasion. It was sabotage by scalpel. Human ships didn't attack head-on. They slipped into Concord territory like ghosts, bypassing defense arrays and silencing AI patrols in seconds. Massive star forges blinked offline before anyone even noticed the drop in temperature. SOC's deadliest weapon wasn't a superweapon or dreadnought. It was precision. Commander Sean Bakshi watched from the bridge of the Resolute Fury as another Concordian communications hub fractured under a kinetic strike. No bright beam, no sound, just the station collapsing into itself. Confirmed, said Lieutenant Vera. Fourth node down. No outgoing alerts. Move to target 5. Make it clean. What about civilians? Bakshi hesitated. Not because he doubted the mission, but because he hadn't stopped hearing that question since this began. We're not here to massacre. We're here to end empires. Across the galaxy, the Concord began to fracture. Species that once bowed to its might now questioned its relevance. If Earth, a backwater, feral world, could dismantle entire fleets in hours, what safety did the Concord actually offer? Riots broke out on outer colonies. Governors declared independence. Trade convoys vanished. Internal networks collapsed under sabotage and confusion. Even worse, humans weren't claiming territory. They weren't asking for tribute. They weren't offering peace. They were just erasing things quietly, with precision, with intent. The psychological toll was devastating. War could be fought, but how do you fight a ghost that never misses? In a secluded briefing chamber on Alaris Prime, Tolvaren met with a few surviving leaders who still clung to logic. They have no homeworld strategy, said Arch-Strategist Polari, voice shaking. They've struck 9 key systems, none of them close to Sol. It's like they're teaching us. They are, Tulvarin replied. They're showing us how fragile we are. Every destroyed node, every vanished fleet, it's a warning. To what? He closed his eyes. That Earthfall isn't coming. It's already here. At the edge of Concord space, a hidden Terran carrier released a final payload, Beacon Bane, an AI-seeded virus encoded in raw physics. Within minutes, over 60% of Concord's quantum beacons failed, severing galactic communication. High above Mars, in the black void beyond the orbit of Phobos, Admiral June Becky stood aboard the TSOC flagship Obsidian Wrath, reading the results in silence. All targets neutralized, said the AI. Concord command structure, paralyzed. A faint murmur rose among the crew. Not joy, not victory, something colder. Purpose. This isn't conquest, Becky said softly. It's correction. They called it peace, but it was assimilation. They made it normal to rewrite cultures, to uplift through extinction. She looked out toward the stars. Now, they'll learn what happens when prey evolves teeth. The Concord had fallen, not in fire, not in glory, but in confusion, silence, and collapse. For the first time in thousands of cycles, the galactic center had no voice to speak with. But Earth did, and it was not done. The voice of soul. They thought Earth was silent, but Earth had been listening. High above Jupiter's shadow, the Terran vessel Helios Warden deployed its final array, a spherical lattice of graviton pulse transmitters calibrated with ruthless precision. The device pulsed once, then again. Then, all at once, the stars around the system rippled. At first glance, it looked like a simple transmission. But to the galaxy, it was a revelation. Every species, every station, every world with ears tuned to deep wave communications felt it, an encoded message, carried on a frequency older than language, resonating across subspace. And then a voice. Human. Calm. Timeless. Utterly terrifying in its clarity. We are the children of soul. We were born in fire, shaped by war, hardened by betrayal. And we remember. To those who believed our silence was weakness, you were wrong. In a single transmission, Earth shattered the illusion of vulnerability it had worn for a century. Across hundreds of systems, Concord citizens gathered in plazas and halls, watching this message play on walls, devices, and even neural implants. The speaker's face remained unseen. The voice, neither male nor female, sounded like the embodiment of something vast, something ancient that had waited beneath humanity's skin for millennia. We watched your diplomacy become domination. We saw cultures erased under the pretense of enlightenment. You called it unity. We call it extinction. You brought war to us masked as peace. Now we return it to you in truth. On Earth, the mood was somber, not celebratory. Within the Strategic Command's core chamber, deep beneath Iceland's volcanic shelf, General Eliza Vorn stood facing the holographic projection of the message as it looped. She didn't blink, didn't speak. Behind her, the room was silent. We've crossed the Rubicon, murmured Colonel Hahn. No, she replied. We burned the bridge behind us. A moment later, a signal pinged, an incoming message from a rogue Concord colony. Not a threat, but a plea. A small world called Rethari 4, on the fringe of Concord space, sent a transmission. We did not sanction what was done. We have lived in fear too. Please don't erase us. Warren's heart ached, not from pity, but from recognition. She remembered being part of a species constantly fearing the next colonizer, the next invader disguised as a benefactor. Earth had learned what it felt like to be small and forgotten. She looked at her aide. Mark Rethari 4 as non-combatant. Deliver humanitarian caches. Ma'am? Humanitarian aid now. She nodded. We're not monsters. We're just the last ones standing with a memory. Elsewhere in the void, aboard the stealth cruiser Black Signal, Commander Sean Bakshi sat in the ship's observatory, watching the red glare of a distant, dying sun. His ship had crippled 4 Concord military foundries in the last cycle. No casualties. Only lights out, machines fried, and command centers swallowed in quiet chaos. But Sean wasn't celebrating. Lieutenant Vera entered and saw him staring into the star's corona. You still thinking about what comes next? Sean gave a tired nod. What does victory even look like now? There's no empire to topple, no army in formation. Just scattered, terrified worlds. Then we help rebuild. Show them we're not what they feared. He smiled faintly. That we're worse. No, she said. That we're human. The transmission from Sol changed everything. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a line in the stars. Some alien species, hearing the message, chose silence, shutting down contact, hoping to remain unnoticed. Others listened and reached out. Carefully, respectfully, and a few offered alliance. For the first time in galactic history, smaller civilizations realized that Earth was not a threat to everyone, only to tyrants. Back in Concord territory, what remained of the Council huddled in a bunker on Vessara Prime. Their worlds were in chaos. Fleets abandoned. Trade fractured. Uprisings spreading like fire. Senator Kaler hissed. This was never supposed to happen. They were primitives. Tolvarin, now cloaked in quiet shame, replied coldly. No, we were blind. They didn't ascend through galactic charity. They forged themselves in isolation. And now we answer for every culture we uplifted into oblivion. Another ping. A new message. From Earth. It simply read, this is not the end. This is the end of pretending. Back on Earth, in the halls of an ancient observatory buried under the Andes, a child stood next to their grandfather, watching the stars pulse with distant signals. Are they scared of us now? The child asked. The old man placed a hand on their shoulder. No, child. They're scared of what we remember, and what we choose not to forget. In the cold night sky, Sol burned like a warning, bright, enduring, and unafraid. Sol's dominion. The stars were no longer silent. They sang in whispers of Terran steel. Across the fractured remains of Concord space, shattered colonies and fractured alliances now knew a new constant. Not the doctrine of order or diplomacy, but the enduring pulse of Sol's dominion. Not an empire, not a federation, a boundary, an invisible perimeter of consequence drawn in the vacuum between stars. On the barren surface of Drelith II, a colony that once flew the Concord banner, Governor Sarn Vuelek stood atop a crumbled balcony, overlooking the devastated skyline of his capital. The city had not been bombed, nor razed by kinetic fire. It had simply stopped working. Communications, energy, AI logistics, all gone, as if some unseen god had flicked a switch and erased the threads of civilization. The message came 5 hours later, not from a fleet, not from soldiers, but from a single Terran drone dropped like a feather. We do not seek your obedience. We do not want your surrender. You will not be colonized. You will be left alone until you invite us differently. Vuelek collapsed into his chair. For the first time in his political life, he felt something that Concord's arrogance had dulled long ago. Shame. Back on Earth, inside the vaulted chambers of TSOC Command beneath Antarctica's Black Rock, Admiral June Becky stood before a global audience. Every screen, every city dome, every orbital station now tuned into her transmission. The background was simple. No flags, no banners. Only the emblem of the Earth, overlaid with the symbol of Sol, a star wrapped in fractal wings. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed into the future. We have reminded the stars that we are still here. We do not claim what is not ours, but we will not be rewritten. Humanity will be free on its terms, or not at all. Around the world, the words hit like thunder. In Nairobi, a child touched the screen with wide eyes. In a lunar mining dome, workers saluted. In orbit, ships paused mid-deployment. Not in hesitation, but reverence. For a century, humanity had hidden its flame. Now it burned so bright, it cast shadows over empires. In the hidden depths of the Concord's last stronghold on Siravan Delta, a desperate final council convened. What remained of the High Concord leadership was broken. Many had fled. Others had disappeared, silenced by rebellion or shame. Tolvarin remained, not as an envoy, but as a witness, a historian watching the age collapse under its own weight. They don't want territory, General Vexery spat. They want humiliation. No, Tolvarin replied, eyes hollow. They want truth. They want to never be forgotten. And what are we to do? Beg for terms. Tolvarin looked upward, toward the gray sky beyond the ceiling dome. Somewhere beyond that was Sol, burning with unrepentant fury. No, we document everything, and we make sure it never happens again. Above Earth, in high orbit, the Obsidian Wrath prepared for final deployment. Commander Sean Bakshi paced slowly across the observation deck. The war, such as it had been, was over. Yet he felt no peace. His lieutenant, Vera, broke the silence. We've done the impossible. The Concord has fallen. There's no one left to fight. Sean nodded, but his jaw was tight. They'll learn, and someone else will rise. Empires don't stay dead. They evolve. Vera stepped beside him. Then what do we become? He turned, eyes tired. A myth. The thing they tell their children about. Not as conquerors, but as the day the galaxy realized it had gone too far. Months passed. The Sol Accord was established. Not a government, not a fleet, but a warning beacon. A network of neutral satellites broadcasting Earth's one and only declaration. Sol is sovereign. Cultures are not to be rewritten. Peace will not come through erasure. For some alien races, it became a sanctuary. Refugees of Concord assimilation drifted toward the system in small, cautious ships, asking only to be seen, not consumed. For others, Earth was a shadow at the edge of thought, a ghost in a gravity well. But for all, Earth had become a fixed point. The wild planet that once screamed into the void had finally spoken back. On a quiet hill above New Santiago, an old man looked up at the stars, sitting next to his granddaughter. The war hadn't reached them directly, but they felt it in every vibration of the air, every tremor in the news. "Did we win?" she asked. He thought for a long while. "No," he said. "We survived. But more than that, we made the galaxy remember who we are." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Will they come back?" He sighed. "Maybe, but next time they'll knock." As the twin moons of Mars rose over the crimson horizon, and Saturn's rings spun in icy silence, one unchanging constant echoed across the stars. Earth was no longer a question. Earth was the answer.